What's poppin', mangoes? It's your boy Blatchinger back with another episode, and today's video is taking us back to a city called Pai in a country called Thailand. Today's story is going to deal with topics of drugs, and I highly discourage anybody from following in my footsteps. So if today's video doesn't sound like it's for you, there's plenty of other videos in the playlist for you to go find. But let's get to the stories.
Oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not bad.
Get fired up. So before I came on this trip, honestly, I was just a pothead. The only drugs I'd really ever tried were like weed and sometimes alcohol. I was drunk less than 10 times before I went on this trip. And so far since I've been traveling, I've smoked weed at least once in every country I've been to, and I've been drunk way too many times to count. One of the biggest reasons why I came to Pai was because I was told that I could find shroom shakes, which are basically psilocybin mushrooms mixed with milkshakes. And that really sounded interesting. I've never tried hallucinogens before, but I was very interested in them, and this sounded like a great opportunity. Just keep in mind that Thailand is a country of many laws, especially regarding partying. So I'm going to put a list of all the illegal drugs on the screen, but please do your own research because I might have missed a few. The penalties for being in possession of controlled substances in Thailand ranges anywhere from 1 to 5 years in prison, and then you can also get fined anywhere up to $35,000 for having anything. So if you want to go to Thailand, there's plenty of legal ways to have fun, but I chose to risk my future just to have a couple extra exciting nights of fun. So if you're going to go anywhere, not just Thailand, but if you're going to go on a trip, please make sure that all your decisions are smart and make sure you stay safe because you probably won't be as lucky as me. I was pretty tired from my long trip from Bangkok to Pai, so I just hung out in my room for a little bit before I finally decided to go meet everybody else I'd be staying with. I met this group of random travelers. Most of us were strangers, but a couple of them were traveling in pairs, and we all headed over to this bar across the street for some beers. And it was pretty amazing because every time you ordered a beer, they'd bring you out a side of fries, and I thought that was pretty incredible. I've never seen that before. And I had to pull out my taser just to break the ice, and it was honestly a great time. Everybody there was pretty cool. After the bar, the majority of us went into town to go bar hopping, and it was pretty nice. There was a lot of clubs and bars and restaurants there. But along the way, I was speaking to the Spanish guy from my hostel, and it turns out that he also was in Pai because he wanted to try the shroom shake. So we decided we were going to try and find them tonight. And since neither of us had ever tried shrooms before, we decided that we were going to trip together, keep each other safe. We were going to be like shroom brothers, basically. So we get into town, and I see this man standing outside of the first bar that we're walking past, and I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go up to him, and I'm like, hey, do you know where we can get some shroom shakes? And he's like, I don't know where you can get shrooms, but if you want, I got some acid. We thanked the man and walked away because me and Nico had never even tried acid before either, and we were just looking for shrooms. I've always told myself that if I was going to try hallucinogens, I would try shrooms first because shrooms are supposed to be a more mellow high than acid, and it's supposed to be easier for people to get into hallucinogens if they try shrooms first because it's not as intense of a high, basically. But then we're walking down the street for a little bit, and I look at Nico, and I'm like, okay, but when are we ever going to get the chance to try acid for the first time in Thailand again? So we turned back around, we paid the guy $10 each, and we followed him into this sketchy bathroom in the back of the bar. So most of the time when you try acid, it's going to be soaked into like a sugar cube, not likely, or most likely it's going to be soaked into like a tab. And this man pulled out a whole bottle of liquid acid, and he's like, yeah, so my acid is pretty potent, and it's probably not the best for like a first timer. And he kind of warned us, but we took it anyway. He already had our money. So he drops the acid into Nico's mouth first, and he accidentally gives him 2 drops, and I was like, damn, this man is going to get fucked up tonight. And then he comes over to me, and he only gives me 1 drop, and in my head I'm like a little disappointed because I wanted to be as high as Nico. But the guy was like, don't worry, you're going to be fucked up no matter what. So the random drug dealer told me that it was going to take like 45 minutes to an hour for the high to kick in. So me and Nico just headed onto the dance floor to go party and just get our vibes flowing correctly before we started tripping.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
We hit the 45-minute mark, and neither Nico nor I felt anything yet. And I was starting to think that this guy might have given us like some sugar water just to scam us. And we just gave it like 15 more minutes before we started to panic.
15 minutes later.
So another 15 minutes goes by and we still feel nothing. And Nico definitely should have felt something because he was double dosed. So it definitely should have hit him by now at least. So we went to go look for the guy. So I find the guy and he's actually walking back to the bar. And I'm like, hey, can I get another drop? And he's like, honestly, bro, I'm actually only heading back to the bar right now because I lost the money that you guys gave me. So I was trying to see if I dropped it somewhere. He's like, I'm not going to ask you for any more money. I just wanted to say that. That's the only reason why I came back. But he's like, I'll give you another drop just because I want you to have a good time. I don't want you to feel like you got robbed. But he's like, just be safe, bro, because this shit is honestly really potent. So he takes me back into the bathroom, gives me one more drop under the tongue, and that is the last time I ever see this guy ever again. And me and Nico, we're getting tired of this first bar, so we head down the street to the next one. And along the way, that's when things started to vibrate. I could tell the acid was finally hitting me, but then I realized that it was way too soon for the second drop to have been affecting me. So that meant that the first drop was just hitting me now. So that meant that in about another hour, I was going to be feeling incredibly high. The drug dealer told us that the high was going to last about 14 hours, and we started tripping around 10 p.m., so this was going to be a really long ride. So we get to the next bar, and that's when the walls started feeling like they were like melting all around me. And there was this painting of like a lion on the wall, and it looked so real that it looked like it was breathing. And I look at this guy next to me, and I'm like, hey, bro, I'm kind of on acid right now. Can you tell me if that lion is moving or if that's just me? And he's like, that's definitely just you. And then I'm looking at this guy, and I'm like, yo, I'm sorry I'm staring at you, bro, but your face just looks like it's like stretching and like growing right now in like weird angles. And then for some reason he apologized to me, but I assured him it was my fault because I was just tripping balls at this point. I stuck with Nico for most of the night, but every single time I looked over at him, there was another button missing from his shirt until eventually he was just running around with no shirt on. I'm not really sure what happened to that. The bars closed around 1 a.m. and I tried to help bring Nico back to the hostel because I'm pretty sure he was tripping so hard he had no idea what was going on at this point. It was supposed to be like a 10-minute walk back to our hostel, but it took us like 30 minutes because Nico kept trying to run around and party more, but I had to remind him that the bars were already closed, so we had to get back to the hostel where it was safe. He also kept forgetting that I spoke English, so it led to this happening a lot.
O sea,
Yo.
esto es la puta hostia, te lo juro. Esto es la puta hostia, hermano. Pablo, te tienes que venir, hermano. Te lo juro que te tienes que venir, hermano. Es que ya está, ¿sabes?
Habla inglés. Habla inglés por mi amigos, por favor.
Please come to our hostel.
Come to our fucking hostel, guys. When we finally got back to the hostel, we hung out with some people that we saw chilling in some hammocks because we were way too high still to try sleeping right now. I met this one guy and I kept calling him James all night, and he honestly was so helpful because he said that he's tripped before, and he honestly helped me through my high, and he kept me out of trouble all night with the hostel staff because if it wasn't for him, I probably would have been kicked out. The next day, he told me that his name was actually Mason, and he just didn't want to ruin my high by telling me I was wrong. I have no idea why I was calling him James, honestly. One of the things that he warned me of was that mirrors and psychedelics just don't mix well, so he said to never look at yourself in the mirror while you're tripping. So, since I love to just not follow instructions, I went to the nearest mirror and I just stared at myself in it. This was probably the trippiest part of my night because I swear I saw the skin melting off my body, and it looked like I was aging up like 100 years, but it also looked like I was aging backwards, and I don't really know how that works. And then the longer I stared at myself in the mirror, it looked like I was like turning into an Egyptian Sphinx cat, like a Persian cat. I swear, like that's what I saw. Then this girl come up to me and she was like, why are you staring at yourself in the mirror so hard? You look like you're about to fight yourself. And I was like, I'm sphinxing. And then she was like, okay, cool. And then she ended up just sphinxing in the mirror with me. Try it again.
Sphinx.
That.
Sphinx.
Wow.
Sphinx. Persian cat.
So one last weird thing I want to add about my acid trip. The first guy that I talked to, the one I said who had the stretching face, he ended up staying in my hostel too. So when he saw me back there later that night, he ended up coming up to me and he was like, hey, you want to go hang out over there? And I look and I'm like, in my head I'm like, there's just darkness over there. Like he just pointed out into the darkness. Everyone's over here hanging out in the light. And he's like, hey, you want to go hang out over here? And he just points into the darkness. And I'm like, nah, man, I think I'm cool over here. I'm just going to go chill with these people. And then I swear the man, he's like, okay. And then he just disappears into the darkness. And I was like, what the heck? And I'm chilling with these people. We're having a good time. We're like chilling for like an hour. Maybe an hour goes by. And then this guy finally walks back out of the darkness. He just walks in the background for like 2 seconds. He goes this way. He goes that way, like a background character. Mad weird. I don't know what he was doing. But I'm so glad I did not follow that man into the darkness. So please, if you ever do drugs, make sure you only surround yourself with good company. Make sure you have someone to look out for you. Don't do it by yourself, probably. Don't do hard drugs by yourself, please. I just want y'all to stay safe. I didn't end up going to bed until like 5 in the morning, and this was honestly probably one of the most interesting nights of my entire trip. I woke up in the morning and the walls were still melting and breathing around me, and I think the acid trip was definitely worth the money. But I think that's a good place to end today's episode. Let me just remind you again, please don't take drugs, especially from strangers, especially in foreign countries. Just because it worked out for me doesn't mean it's going to work out for you. And thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, comment down below your favorite number between 1 and 100. For some reason, I've been feeling pretty attached to the number 37 recently. I couldn't tell you why. Maybe eventually we'll figure that out. But live forward, learn backwards. I'll catch you guys next time. Have a good one.